customer 360 is something a lot of people have talked about for about 10 years, and it's always been chased, but never really achieved for most teams. And I think AI unlocks a lot of that. And to talk about that with us, we have Esther and Kelsey from the material security team. Quick background and story here. We actually started working with them. Esther, you can maybe help fill in the gap too. I think a year and a half to 2 years ago. So actually probably one of the first 50 Pylon customers. And Esther, what were you thinking? How did you choose us back then? Now we were a tiny startup. You were coming from a Zendesk shop. First off, like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, I think it's been about 2 years of a great partnership, which is great. When I originally started with Material, I was tasked to build out our support team. We were founder led, and we had our SEs and our founders doing support. And when I came on, they were like, we need a support team and we need the tools and infrastructures in place. And having grown up throughout my career in technical support, I knew that I didn't want to go with one of the big incumbents like Zendesk or Salesforce. I knew that I wanted something that was quite flexible, especially for a growing and scaling small team. And so Pylon actually was introduced to me by our current field CISO at the time, Rajan. He was managing our support org, and he was like, I heard about this tool called Pylon. And of course I was like, oh, I'll take a look at it. And then I came and had a call with you, Marty, and I think Advith and Robert. And it was just such an easy decision because it had everything that we needed at the time, right? A flexible Kanban type support ticketing platform that could connect to Slack. Slack was how we supported our customers. Probably, I would say like 95% of our customer base still uses Slack for support today. And so I knew I needed something that had a great Slack integration.
Cool. And I appreciate you going into detail there. And we should actually just roll that into, now that we know the topic and kind of context, quick introduction on both sides. Could we go through, maybe Kelsey, going with you first now, on what you do at Material and kind of set the stage for why Customer 360 matters?
Yeah, so I'm on the customer success side of things. I report up to Esther. There's a handful of other customer success managers on the team. I'm also focused on like the operations side of things pretty heavily. My background is in customer success, and that's what I've been doing since I've been at Material, and way before that. So.
Awesome. And then Esther, I know we kind of skipped over your official introduction here. Tell us about what you own.
I own all of customer experience, so everything from post-sales, customer-facing teams, product support, customer success, as well as our technical documentation and knowledge team.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so let's get into it. So, and also quick context, Esther and Kelsey, maybe you could share a little bit about Material and your customer type, customer profile that you work with. Is it more high touch, lower touch, to get a sense of who you're working with?
Yeah, I can take that one. So we actually have customers all over the place in terms of industry, in terms of size. We have a pretty robust commercial presence on the like SMB mid-market side of things now. And that's a lot of where we're focusing efforts lately. But we also have plenty of enterprise, huge corporations that have been customers of ours for several years and were some of our first customers. Again, across a bunch of different industries: healthcare, finance, retail, food service, the typical like high tech SaaS as well, all over. We do everything for everyone.
And I think I just want to add on to that, in that, Marty, you asked if we're low touch, high touch. I think that I can safely speak for everybody at Material when we say that the customers are basically our lifeblood. Like, we love our customers, and regardless of the amount of money they're paying us, we pride ourselves in providing an excellent experience. And I honestly think that we couldn't have done that without Pylon, especially as a growing and scaling organization.
Awesome. And then a really quick context as well, like team-wise, where are you at today? To just understand like kind of functions and where things sit.
Yeah. Our company size is between 50 and 100 employees.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so going into it, when we talk about Customer 360, and also for everyone listening, one of the exciting things here is we have convinced Esther and Kelsey to show some examples of how they've actually set things up. So we'll kind of set the stage for, the before and after, and then we'll actually walk through both some screenshots and actual production setup that they have. And this should really paint the picture of how their Customer 360 actually looks. Starting with this high-level question, which really paints the picture and is actually the breaking point for most companies when they try to build some sort of view of the customer, is where does customer data live today? And like, where is it spread out for you guys? And what was that starting point?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I can take this one. So, when we originally brought on Pylon, we had data in our CRM, in all of our many, 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 many Slack channels. We have many for a small company. Our Google Drive, in addition to email. And then obviously we have data in our Gong account as well. So very disparate areas and no one central place. When I first started, one CSM might have all of their notes about a customer in a Google Doc, while another CSM might put it in, Notion, or they might put it in, the CRM. We didn't have a central repository for customer data. So when we were preparing for any type of phone call with a customer, you can imagine how long that it actually took for us to do call prep, because you had to look at all of those disparate data sources that didn't necessarily talk to each other.
Understood. And so just to make sure I understand, we had the Slack channels, which were customer Slack channels. Do you guys also have internal deal Slack channels where you talk about, so there's the internal channels where you talk about customers, there are the external customer channels where communication happens with them. There's the Google Docs, or Google Drive notes, and each person kind of had their notes scattered. Any call recordings that you would have with customers as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we would have, we use Gong. So it was, I remember when I first came on and I was trying to ramp up on accounts, and it was like, okay, well, search Slack history, searching Google Drive, searching Gong, and hope that things were recorded. Maybe search Notion as well. Maybe also search our CRM and hope there were things there. Try and hunt down the person who had the account before me. Hope that they remembered things from a year or two ago.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we have the same thing for us at Pylon. For when we try to understand a customer account, the thing we started to understand was there are all these customer interactions that happen, not even just in the post-sale side, but also the pre-sale side, that are still relevant, right? So it's the AEs have some emails, maybe there are call recordings with our solutions team and projects, implementation projects they had. We luckily didn't have things in Google Drive kind of spread across people. We had a little bit of process in Notion, but it was very unstructured. And then we tried to, being a younger company, we were like, hey, Salesforce is the place people typically store this information. We tried storing notes there one time, and we're like, nope, it cannot be the place where we take notes on our customers. So pretty quickly toss that out. But, and then also anything about product usage that you guys would often reference, like any place to grab maybe metrics, usage metrics on customers that you also would use?
Not really. Not when Esther and I were first starting, certainly not until quite recently. We didn't really we had some, but it was really general, like seat usage and license usage and things like that. And that would all get put into the CRM. And then we'd have to hunt through the, hundreds of fields and properties.
Yep, makes sense. And this is now kind of transitioning to implementing Pylon, and I can also set the stage and context for a lot of people. What we at Pylon have started to understand is that there's all this conversational context. So usually if you're trying to build a customer 360, you might want a health score, churn risk score, something of that nature. You're trying to collect all these pieces of data and make sense of them together, right? And so it's been historically easier to do with the quantitative metrics on the usage side, but completely invisible when it comes to every conversation that you've had with a customer, every internal note that you've left, because it's all this like unstructured context in conversation data. And so the cool thing, and this is what we'll kind of bleed into, is for the first time now with LLMs, of course, we know we can take unstructured conversational context and turn it into customer signals. We can turn it into kind of more structured fields that might indicate, hey, we should reach out to this customer for an upsell opportunity or risk of churn, et cetera. And so that's kind of where we'll guide the conversation. And so Esther, maybe for you, you had all this conversation, all this data that was spread across these different sources. What happened when you started using Pylon, and like what changed there?
Well, I mean, as you can imagine, our initial use case was on the support side. So managing, like any number of Slack channels beyond 30 is like near impossible for a single person to do. And so bringing Pylon on allowed us the ability to like actually have an SLA, to actually track everything that we're handling, to be able to categorize it and send that data back to our product team. So that's on the support side. On the success side, in terms of customer data, like now we have everything in one single view in one single place, right? We default to Pylon when it comes to aggregating all of the data that we have in all of our disparate places, such that it's easier to do call prep, right? It's easier to see what type of experience a customer is having throughout our many data sources. So Pylon support tickets, Gong calls, any internal conversations that we're having about an account, or any signifiers that we're getting from an account, maybe through like a DM. If we put it into the internal channel, Pylon will pick that up. And then plus all of the data within our CRM. It just makes it so much easier to see what a customer's current experience is like and where we could do better, right? And where we could course correct even proactively before it gets to the point of the customer saying, hey, we're really, really unhappy. I think one of the things that's really exciting to me is also the ability to have customer marketing in one place too, with the broadcast feature. I think not a lot of teams think about, okay, how do we make this a seamless experience from product marketing to customer experience, right? Like there are all these ways that we reach out to our customers through, like marketing efforts. And if the CX teams or the CSMs aren't aware of all of those marketing materials that are getting sent, then there's a little bit of a disparate in customer experience. And so I think that that's really valuable in and of itself. And then I will say that like one of the qualitative things that I think is not quite measurable with data is just how much easier it is for our employees, especially on our support and our success teams, to do their jobs. And like when you have folks who have the tools that are going to support them in being awesome at whatever they're doing, they're going to be providing a better experience to the customers, right? Because they don't have to spend 90 minutes to 2 hours, 3 hours pulling stuff from prior calls, looking at all of the disparate data sources. Yeah. So I think that is invaluable as well.
And Kelsey, I'm sure you've seen this on the CS side as well. Like one of the things we see all the time is, hey, you have a new CSM or you kind of shift books of business. And you're like, okay, who are my accounts, right? And you do not have any of that historical context on who are they, what do they care about, what have they been frustrated about, what do they want. Can you talk about like your perspective here? Like so you get all the data into one place. We'll look in a moment at examples of kind of what that looks like, but what are the workflows that fundamentally change, or what kind of gets unlocked on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and I was actually doing some of the like knowledge transfer. I was working on an account notebook before this, actually, about an account 360 view, or just like if you're coming onto this account, what do you need to know? And I would say the biggest shift is that I can just ask Pylon a question about a customer or about all of our customers and get an answer basically immediately. Um, and and it's going to be accurate,
Yep.
which I think is not necessarily the case for other tools that we've seen, or that we've used, that have some AI in them. And I think that's been a huge shift. We can trust the answers we're getting, and there's, you know, the sources are cited, so I know that I can go, if I want to go dig in a little bit further, I can just click through. And being able to answer those questions really quickly on the fly, means that, you know, if Esther or someone else from, our senior leadership or outside of the CX org wants to know something about a customer, where a status update, things like that,
Yep.
I can get that answer right away.
Totally.
And I'll just sift through everything first.
Yep. Makes sense. And yeah, like practical use cases that even me as a leader, I use all the time are, hey, I need to understand an account quickly, right? And it could be, in our case, we're even using the customer 360s for the sales team. So, the sales team has a notebook, which we'll show in a moment, that says, hey, here are the goals and use cases of this prospect, right? And this is just a prompt. You write, what are their goals and use cases based on the business objectives that they've lined out, right? So here's a bullet list response. What is their timeline? Who are the contacts on the deal? And like label what their titles and responsibilities are. What are the blockers on this deal? And all of those things, you can just customize these notebooks that we're about to look at based off of all the data that we have. So one, consolidate the data is step one, from product usage, from Gong calls, from Slack conversations, internal, external, support tickets, et cetera, and then just run prompts on top of it. And so it's not like, hey, leaving a lot of notes, but we'll see actually summarized, basically summaries of the information that you need to have, whether you're prepping for a call, whether you've been handed an account, whether you're thinking about who to upsell, et cetera. So let's go into maybe some screenshots to start. And then Kelsey, I believe, has some live demo notebooks that she'll also be able to show here in a moment. So we have like the starter notebook use case. And so this is where, showing what the structure of a notebook could look like, where we're starting first with kind of more of the structured data piece. And so this is actually just showing, okay, we're pulling in structured data, let's say a HubSpot or any sorts of fields that Pylon is calculating, and maybe some basic data like some notes. So on the Pylon side, we have this type of view, and this is typically still important outside of the conversational stuff. So Kelsey or Esther, if one of you wants to comment, really, how do you use this notebook as kind of the starting point for understanding customers?
Yeah, I can start and then hand it off to Esther. I think, for a CSM, it's really useful to just have it at a glance. What did they buy? What are they using? When did we last talk to them is basically what's being covered here. As we add more product usage telemetry and things like that, we can pull those into this notebook as well. And I think that's the flexibility has also been one of my favorite things about the account notebooks, personally. But the at a glance, and that I can flip through different customers and see the same types of information, has been really useful. I don't know, Esther, if you have more to add.
Yeah, I would say +1 to that. And the other thing, from a leadership perspective, is that all of the fields that I care about in our CRM are actually in this one view. So if you can imagine, like anytime I need to look up a customer prior to Pylon, I'd have to sort through and find the right fields that I wanted in the CRM. Pylon now gives us the ability to have a single page view where I could pull up any customer and see all of the fields that I care about. So from my perspective, it's a really great way to have an overview of the things that you really care about when it comes to a customer, and having that high level visibility into that particular customer.
Yep, makes complete sense. And one thing to point out here that's maybe not super obvious when we start to look at this is one sample view of many that we'll see on the left here. So there are those starred notebooks that you can see, and so we can see different notebooks that they have pre-prepared for whatever use case they have. So this might be, hey, like looking at product usage. Another might be QBR prep that tells us what should we talk about for a QBR. Another might be preparing for a meeting or even high level overview. So we'll take a look at kind of more details here. So as we scroll down on the customer 360, what else are we seeing, Esther and Kelsey?
Yeah, so this is the like it says at a glance. It's, I just want to see like the most important fields top down, and then we have a field account status notes that's updated regularly, so that we can see it in any of the different views we have set up. It's just the CSM saying like the latest thing, mainly around renewals, but it could just be around projects, things like that. Like, what do I care about? How soon is their renewal? What's their health? Have we done any NPS or CSAT? Do they have a score? What's the status? And that's it. And it's all right here. And you don't really have to, like Esther was saying, poke around in the CRM or like go ask the CSM what the latest status is. It's all just here.
Awesome. And then going to the next one, this is actually where we get into some of the really cool things that we can do past the structured fields. And one thing to point out, all of these blocks are actually just drag and drop. And so super easy to drag something in, have either a static field that gets pulled in from a HubSpot or something that's calculated with a formula. And then one thing I want to draw attention to, and we'll look more at in a moment here, are we have these AI generated blocks here on the bottom right. And so these are actually generated by a prompt that you run on top of all this customer data that Pylon is connected to. So Kelsey, I don't know if you want to mention maybe like what type of prompt might be generating this. But yeah, could you give us a sense?
Totally. So the one, and I'm trying to remember because it's a little small on my screen, but so the one on the right actually is also an AI formula. Basically, the potential risk factors is pulling from a different account notebook, the churn retro, where we have a field that's basically saying, why might this customer churn? What potential areas of concern are there? And then basically selecting one or many of these different criteria we've set based on that output. On the right, it's basically saying what are the reasons for those individual, like more generic risk factors. So I'd have to pull up the actual notebook to know the exact prompt, but it's basically saying based on the account notebook churn retro, like based on the risk reasons and the potential risk factors fields, give me more detail about why this account is at risk, and as much detail as possible. I will say that the AI fields are kind of incredibly impressive, like more than I expected them to be, because of how much detail they can provide. And even I will say the potential risk factors on the left, it says work in progress because I'm still figuring out how specific I want to be. But the reasons on the right, I mean, I can give this to any CSM and say, go address these, and it's all right. It's all correct. It's all right there.
Yeah, I think the power of these AI prompts is untapped, to be honest, right? Like, I think we're using it for a very specific use case in the health and risk. But I just love that you can give it a prompt based on what you care about, and it will look at all of your data and then give you a fairly accurate answer, which, as Kelsey mentioned, is quite actionable for the CSM.
I actually just looked up the prompt, and it's literally just return reasoning for the field, which is risk of churn. So it's nested AI fields, that it's very straightforward. It's not even a detailed prompt.
Yeah, and this is the cool thing. I feel like it takes one of the hardest parts of existing products that try to give you some sort of overview of an account, which all rely on complex formula fields as the only thing that you can build. And only include the quantitative side to, hey, let me just describe what I'm looking for, right? So if we want like a high level summary, so the AI generated paragraph here on the bottom right, we can just say, hey, explain this about the customer. and it'll just spit it out, and it'll get updated every single time there's a new conversation, a gong call, a personal email that gets sent, a calendar event, etc. And then we have the structured signals that, of course, can be either based on those summaries, which becomes much more efficient for the AI to process, or can be also looking at all of the data at once. And so you go from, hey, everything has to be super structured. You usually then need an ops person to kind of own it, to, hey, I can just have plain text descriptions of what I want to see, whether it's a structured field or a summary of what I'm trying to understand about a customer. Yeah, awesome. And then a couple more here. Esther, Kelsey, if you want to talk about this one, we have 2 more examples that we could go through, or we can also go to seeing it live as well if we want.
I would say this one's fairly straightforward. Again, I've left notes for myself of things I want to add, and you can see, some of them we'll need to pull from our CRM. Maybe we need to ingest into the CRM first. But again, this is just to if I only care about what the revenue is, then it's here. If I only care about the engagement, then it's here, and it's easy to find. I think the next snapshot is related to churn and a churn retro, which is based on a prompt we have as well. So that might be more interesting for folks. Yeah. So here basically we have 3. It's a simple notebook. It's 3 different blocks. So the churn reasons, that's something that's manually set by our CSMs after a customer churns or gives us a notice of churn. It's based on there's a multi-select field. The internal learnings, that's a static or manual text box that just we put in our notes from whatever debrief we did. And then the AI takeaways, the prompt is basically 3 questions. It's what was the primary churn reason? What could we have done differently? And are there any learnings or takeaways from this churn? And the great thing about this notebook in particular is that those 3 different questions in the one prompt are actually really useful, even if the customer hasn't churned, for identifying risk. So while we're still building out other risk-related notebooks and views, CSMs can just go to this one and it'll say, this customer hasn't churned yet, but here are the reasons why you should be wary, or here are areas for concern, or they're super happy.
Yeah, and this kind of changes. We've done something similar internally where this is, of course, the account level summaries that we're building. But then if we take those, turn those into structured account fields that are also AI based, they can help prioritize who to focus on, right? Because
Exactly.
in a customer success role, you're probably thinking about a couple things. Who is, if you're commercial, maybe who should be using more products that you have or is upsellable, who's at risk of churn. And so help me understand, and this is one of the biggest challenges in the CS world, is who do I focus on within my book of business? And it's what I think makes it so hard to manage bigger and bigger books. But if you know the right person to focus on and exactly what to focus on for them, makes the job so much easier. So both in the, hey, if we take this data and we create more of a list view on who to prioritize and a signal, we can do that off of that data and then hop into the account and get all that context as you've kind of broken down here.
Yeah, I'll also say, to follow up on this particular notebook, I originally set up this notebook in the internal learnings. It's funny because I put that manual field in there because, I was like, AI is good, but it's not perfect. It's not going to give us everything. And we're going to lack some context that we're going to need to learn from any and all churn that we have. And it's funny because the AI takeaways actually gave us pretty much the exact same thing without even us having to put in that manual summary. So it was more of hey, I want to test this out and see if it actually works and pulls the things that I need and gives me the takeaways that I need. And I think we'll probably end up getting rid of it because it seems fairly redundant based on what the AI takeaways generated for us.
Yep, makes sense. Yeah, we've been the same way. And another thing I've started to realize is so much work, especially for leadership when you're trying to dive into an account, is relying on other people saying things anecdotally or leaving notes about a customer. Whereas this allows you in some ways, if you have all the data connected, to just get straight to the first party information, and is often actually more reliable. That means, hey, the customer success team may have to spend less time telling kind of whichever manager, this is what's going on with the account, or here's, information about them, and instead kind of enabling managers or even CEOs like me to go straight to the first party data and understand what's going on. And this is, one thing to mention here, and we might see this live in part of the demo, is and it was mentioned, I think, by Kelsey in the beginning, this is kind of the account level pre-summarized views that the AI might be generating, but then there's also the Ask AI kind of ChatGPT-like interface where you can just click a button and just ask whatever question you want about the customer. So you kind of have access to both of those. One, these like pre-structured summaries, and then two, the kind of ChatGPT-like interface where you can actually just ask questions about the account. So yeah, if we want to go into seeing it live, Kelsey, and you want to share something here, let me turn off, I think there we go.
Yeah. Where would you like to start, Artie? I can start with the notebooks or go to health score. Or...
I think we should start with a notebook and kind of see, like, I think it's one thing to see the screenshots, another to like see it live and maybe even click on the prompts and understand actually how these get developed.
Sure. All right. So right now, I will say this is our test account. I'm not showing you real customer data. There's very little actual data in here for obvious reasons. But you will notice that, so this is the customer 360 notebook that we were looking at snapshots before of a customer. And I have just different sections so you can click through and say, revenue and growth. This one, if we say, we like to give each other a little bit of sass when we send test messages through the chat. So, I'm a meanie, I didn't want to help. We have
our the one thing, Kelsey, could you show for totally. Everyone to see and understand here, there's that prompt that she's hovering over, and this is literally saying, so this is just like all this whole thing is generated by is just this simple prompt, right? Which is looking at that risk of churn field right above that says high, and it's just like, explain why it's high. Like that's it. And so we've kind of taken, the risk of high field there, and then we're just asking for elaboration essentially. And that's the crazy thing. It's like when you think about setting these things up, it's not like super complex setup or really complicated to like think through how to generate the right thing. I think there is some prompt engineering that makes it a lot better, but at its most basic level, it's just like, okay, describe in plain text what you really care about and what you want to see.
Yeah, I think the other piece that's been helpful, actually, it is on the account overview, is the use cases. And I think this actually, the account overview is one that came standard or default. So props to Pylon for making really helpful account notebooks. But like this one is just, it's a list of, key aspects the customer values most. And it's a super generic prompt, but for an actual customer, this is super reasonable. And also it can clearly call out that this is the test demo account.
And can you also show, as you're hovering over that sentence, one thing to call out is like the citation. So, when we're looking at that prompt of, hey, just explain the use cases, once again, one sentence, two sentences in plain text, we can see actually those like 5 or so sentences all have citations for what created them, right? So that one prompt can generate this entire block. And if you hover over these, you can go dig exactly into the piece of data that actually helped summarize it. And this is like one thing that's kind of mind-boggling. So you might have, for example, one prompt here that generates like a couple paragraphs, and then like you can see, hey, this one sentence came from 5 different conversations that we've had with the customer, right? And so it's literally going through every single customer interaction across the Gong calls, across the tickets, across the internal Slack conversations, across the personal emails, across the product usage to kind of create this high level summary. And so again, this is kind of a sample example with the demo data, but it's crazy. Like if I, let's say you're a CSM, again, you get handed an account, you're like, where do I start? You might go into Salesforce or HubSpot, look through like a bunch of notes, it's a timeline view, whereas this summarizes things into the format that you actually care about and need. It's more digestible from like a human aspect. And then Kelsey, if you don't mind sharing also the Ask AI on the right of like, okay, you have kind of these prompts, but then what if I actually just want to understand more about the customer? You could then go in and just write prompts to understand who they are. We actually recently introduced MCP connections as well, where if you did want these questions to crawl, let's say your Linear or Jira tickets for like product stuff or Notion or any product that has MCP, you can also start to connect these here. And so, hey, yeah, this is a great example, right? So who are the contacts I care about? And then even, I think we have a sample. If you scroll down in the notebook, there is also a contact section potentially. I think we have it in the default. No, we don't have it in the
I
default
might have
here.
gotten rid of it also.
No worries. And then one more thing to call out here is if you scroll to, or if you click the edit notebook
Yep.
at the top, right? This is how it's actually created. And
Yeah.
it's so simple. It's just a drag and drop. And so, for example, if you bring one of the AI text blocks in, and we just want to see, okay, what would it look like if we just wanted to create that paragraph? Like, yeah, if we click at the examples, it could be, okay, like, let's
Oh
just
yeah, here's the stakeholders.
stakeholders, right? So click that, click save, and then we'll immediately, once it generates, have a good sense of who the different contacts on the account are. So yeah, there we go. It's generating based off of every single customer touch point, every customer engagement. And like, it's just that easy is the crazy part. So we're going to see here in a moment, kind of what that data looks like. So I think because this is a test account,
It's not going to be a good demo.
so yeah, not, but the point is, yeah, drag and drop, easy prompting, and that's all once you have that data connected, which pretty much every data connection is just like a one-click connect to Gong calls, connect HubSpot. Oh, there we go, and there's our actual summary. So Esther, the most active fake user here, we can see every single help request that was coming in, and yeah, it's that simple.
Yeah, it is simple, and it makes it so easy to service other use cases. Like one of the things that we're working on right now is the handoff from pre to post sales, right? A lot of the conversation that happens with the sales team is in Gong. A lot of we also start shared Slack channels during our pre-customer phase, and so having to do a person-to-person handoff takes a lot of time, right? And when you're growing and scaling, you don't have the time to do a 30-minute call to hand off a customer pre to post sales. So the ability to have this flexibility where you could create basically any AI prompt makes it so easy to service so many different use cases, not just within CX, but also to make more efficient workflows within the whole company.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have other leaders who also end up wanting access to the data. Like I frequently, I mean, for me, other co-founders, like, hey, some account gets flagged to us. Where do I go? I go into Pylon and I just go look at that. I hear all the time from other support and CS leaders we work with where they're saying, hey, my CEO is like asking for Pylon access because I showed them a notebook and they're like, wait, like I want to go in there and I want to be able to access that same data. Look at least the basic overview. So yeah, it's crazy. And have you guys seen any cross-team adoption as well? Is anyone also like kind of clamoring for the data access or?
Oh yeah. Product engineering, pre-sales, marketing, pretty much every org is asking for access because all of the data is aggregated into one place. And I will say that the AI prompt feature, what we're showing today, is really powerful and it's fairly accurate. Obviously as a modern company, we're adopting AI, and some of the AI that I've seen isn't nearly as accurate as the stuff that we're getting back from Pylon because it doesn't have all of the data aggregated into one place. So yeah, there's definitely a use case across the company outside of CX as well.
Yeah, and this is the other thing I'll just share with everyone who's listening. Like one of the biggest realizations for us when we had built the first product, which is the ticketing system, the customer support platform, was, hey, we always thought of ourselves first as a customer support company. But if we put customer support over here, we realized actually one of the big unlocks in solving the B2B support problem, which is kind of this context gathering across every single customer touch point, is we've actually built this like context graph of all the customer data. So we have more than any other system are connected into every customer interaction in a way that HubSpot or Salesforce aren't. Snowflake has product usage, but it doesn't have the other qualitative side of every conversation. And so really, there is no other place where you can actually get access to all the data in one spot. And so this is what makes it so powerful. If you can get the data in, which we're trying to make it as easy as possible to do, we can give you really easy ways to structure that data. One, for the support use case, so hey, I need to understand this account. For one use case, for the CS team, being able to go into a notebook and understand across, or understand different use cases, whether it's handoff or meeting prep, et cetera. And then even other places that we didn't even think to start would be helpful. But for example, creating lists of accounts that prioritize who's most at risk of churn, right? And that's where we create those structured account level fields. Or, hey, maybe the product team wants to know, because you have access to all the customer data, what are the top feature requests across all customers? And so we're kind of productizing all those common use cases for all the various cross-functional teams that now want access to this data set.
I think the only thing I would add to that is so this is the notebook that I was talking about I was creating earlier today, and it probably took me 5 to 10 minutes, and that was just because I wanted to refine some of the questions. It was incredibly easy to do, and now I have it for all of our accounts. And if I make an edit here during this demo, it'll go live on all of my other accounts. And like I think I was showing a bit earlier, like it's really straightforward questions, which has been, I think, the most game-changing aspect of it. It's just, I don't, like you said, you can do some prompt engineering, but it'll show me the reasoning, it'll show me the citations, it'll show me everything I need to know to be confident in the answer, and it takes no time.
And I think another thing to call out is a lot of people are thinking about what are, AI, especially when it's customer facing, is much higher risk. But actually, all of this stuff is all internal facing, right? So it's more about like, how do we just speed up our internal workflows to understand an account? And it's really like, when you think about the business value of having a CSM or some other member of the team just like gather context for a customer to prepare for something, there isn't that much value that you're getting out of that work. But what you do get value out of is, hey, talking to the customer and solving their pain point, showing up prepared. And that is then so much faster than unlocked here. So it's I think that's where we see the value. And if we go back, I think, into the slides here, we looked at some example notebooks. See the maybe also going into more questions here that we had prepared, like Esther or Kelsey, if you want to answer, like, how has reporting changed at all, or like collaboration cross-functionally now that you have access to this data?
So I would say that one of the things that I think is beautiful about Pylon is that, it's no longer a disparate customer experience, right? Like when a customer reaches out to support, the CSM has all of that access, right, to every single support ticket that's ever come in. They have access to all the feature requests so that they can make a case with our product team about why a certain feature should be made or developed, et cetera. And so I think, like, cross-functional collaboration, even just within CX, is way more efficient. We also have quite a few views. So, I have my leadership view where I'm looking at like every single account by renewal date or by CSM. I can filter it and sort it however I want. And then, like, we no longer have to have a dedicated hour-long meeting to talk about every single renewal, because all of the account status notes are being pulled into a single view where we have like a CSM's call on whether or not they think that renewal is going to close, whether there's any risk, if there's anything that they need help on, there's like the ability to do that. And then for us to bring it into any of the notebooks is such a powerful way to be able to collaborate, especially when you're moving at break speed. You guys well know this, Marty. You guys work really fast, push a lot of product changes and new features, and we're doing the same thing. And we have to have the ability to stay organized. And so it's definitely changed how we collaborate internally. The reporting, I think, is something that has immensely helped me when it comes to having better conversations with our leadership team. So I have the ability where I can flag any account that we're concerned about And then I bring that view to the, leadership team, and we talk about all of the accounts that we need to talk about that need to be prioritized, where we need to like have some sort of executive engagement, where we need some SLT involvement. So it just makes everything so much more efficient. And we're not like, spending 60 minutes talking about 2 accounts, because we're looking at all of the different data sources to find the most recent or current information.
It's also crazy just to ask a question here on without Pylon, where would you go? Like if like can you imagine now a world without the notebooks and like
I would go and crawl into a hole and cry, I think probably. I just literally wouldn't be able to do my job as quickly to the extent that I need to do, because we're a smaller company and we're moving really fast, and like everything is do it faster,
right,
which is true in a lot of startups pretty much everywhere. And we would fall behind. There's no way that we could keep up. And that was true for quite a long time, before we got Pylon, before we actually consolidated in one place and like had these tools. But yeah, I think I would be sad is where I would go.
yeah.
I obviously we're on a Pylon webinar, and we're obviously fangirl Pylon, like that much is very clear. But I do want to just give everybody the context that we actually, when we started looking for a CSP, Pylon didn't have like a competitive product. You guys were just starting to think about like a customer 360, thinking about like account management and like a true competitor in the customer success platform landscape. And we actually went with a competitor because we needed something now and we needed something fast. Spoiler alert, that did not go well, obviously, because we decided to move back to Pylon, because just the efficiency and the speed at which we could get our like CSP in Pylon stood up blew the competitor out of the water. It was like well, you can't even compare the two. So I mean, I think I can, Kelsey said it best. We would be lost. And I think if Pylon didn't exist, I would probably be using some sort of vibe code app to try to build my own. But luckily it does exist.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think our team also underappreciates account intelligence because we've built it over time, and it's like the boiling frog analogy, where if you drop a frog into boiling water, it immediately feels the change in heat temperature, right? It's super hot and you feel it. But when you slowly turn up the temperature and then it becomes boiling, you don't actually feel the change because you just feel that relative difference when it spikes like that. So for us, when I think about our team, there's no way we could do our job right now without Pylon. It's like I don't know where I'd get contacts on accounts. It would be terrible. It would be like this, hey, do a lot of prep every time you're showing up for a meeting. Have to have a lot more meetings. Our CS team would not be able to manage the number of accounts that they're managing. Our support team would answer more poorly because they don't have the context into customer account. Our solutions team would have to have meetings with the AEs now. They just have these account notebooks that tell you everything you need to know. Like when I'm looking at what's blocking, our customers from being as successful as they can be, I'm looking at kind of aggregated views of these accounts. And so, yeah, there's absolutely no way once you actually start to get into the rhythm of using the notebooks that you can go back. And that's whether it's go back to nothing or frankly, even some of the like legacy tools that are the traditional like customer success platform type setup where it's mostly just some custom fields and manual notes and you can't really get much more out of it. So yeah, makes sense on that. If we want to go through, is there anything we could look at on like the formula side of creating like the sentiments or the scores?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can share my screen again.
Into that, it looks like there's a question from Cole about being able to prompt the account to see network pain points.
Yeah.
So this is actually a use case for me because when I'm having leadership conversations, sometimes the question is, okay, across our customer base, what are the things we're seeing this week or this month or this quarter? What are the things we need to do in terms of like, relationship management, or like product features that we have to build or bugs that we have to fix. I tend to use the Ask AI feature a lot to tell me more like network specific data, right? Where it'll look across all of our customer base to tell us some insight. I also like to do it. So we have a scaled segment of our business and a managed where we assign a dedicated CSM. So sometimes I want segment specific data. And I just use Ask AI and I say, hey, identify all the, scaled accounts and tell me the top 3 pain points that scaled accounts are facing this week, or tell me the top 3 feature requests and give me the ARR associated with those features. So yeah, I think that that use case is very easily served by Ask AI.
Makes sense. And also, before we go into that, there's actually one thing I wasn't planning on sharing my screen, but I feel like there are 2 things that could help paint the picture really quick, if we want to look at them before moving forward. One is, this is like a sample demo view that we sometimes share with folks. And we looked at, for example, the notebooks that you click into and you're suddenly in the account. So if I click, this is a list of accounts and some demo data of if I clicked into this customer here, I'd actually see an account view that we kind of looked at examples for. But you can also, we looked at like what that question is really partially asking is like there's the account level summarization where you understand this specific account. Then there's the lists of accounts. So if I'm a CSM and I want to understand, for example, who is most upsellable for something, you can go and create those structured fields and use them to sort your accounts. So for example, we have a signal here that's created. And if I look at this edit field, or actually maybe a better example would be on, let's say there's like a AI sentiment that we want to generate. So let's say I want to look at this field. We can actually use these prompts to also structure the accounts into different signals, whether it's like a sentiment example where, hey, in this case, our prompt is categorize them as an advocate in terms of sentiment if they express strong enthusiasm, recommend it, share positive results, or maybe they're a detractor if they talk about competitors, they're dissatisfied or questioning the value of the product. And so all we have to do to create those, and once again, this is going to look at all that context that we have across every single customer interaction, is just create prompts. And then that's going to spit out these structured fields, or if we want something that's a little less structured and maybe high-level descriptions, we can even create AI fields that are just more text areas. So we could say this is actually looking at other variables that we've had. So this is kind of that like AI field inception where we're using one AI field to generate another AI field. And this is actually going to generate short summaries, or even, hey, maybe we have multiple signals for what is upsellable for a certain set of customers. And so we can say, hey, label them as AI agents plus AI assistants plus account intelligence if they meet whatever prompting criteria happens to be true in this case. So yeah, very, very cool way to structure it. And then the other piece on the Ask AI front that was just asked here, this is where you can actually go into kind of the high level view of all customers and ask questions here, and this will give you like quick spot checks. And then the last thing I'll mention I think is really fun is we do have this AI report section. Esther, have you used this by any chance? Or Kelsey, have either of you used the AI report section?
No, but I'm about to.
So this is actually really cool. The same shape that the account notebooks have, where it's like a drag and drop, drop blocks in, describe your prompt, you can actually start using across the entire customer database. And so you can basically say, for example, I want to generate a weekly support summary. And so here's a sample template that we have. And, this first block will be, hey, just give me a high level summary of support activity for the week. Hey, list the top 5 issue categorizations with descriptions, summarize estimations, and this will give you the cross company across all data, what you care about. And then if you want to filter, let's say, in our case, we use it for prospects and customers, and we want to just say, hey, like do it for only customers or people in trial, you can actually segment that down to a specific set. So yeah, really easy to not just do once you get the data, you can do the account level, you can do the lists of accounts, and you can even do across the entire customer base. And this totally expands the way that you can start to understand and leverage the data. So yeah. And then if we go back here, yeah, Kelsey, sorry, I interrupted right there.
That's totally fine.
that formulas and kind of some of what you've built?
Yeah, so you already showed the sentiment one, which is actually the exact same that we're using for our sentiment, the AI generated sentiment. So it's based on the sentiment AI fields from the notebook. We've been playing around with health score, like how to calculate a health score. So this was, we pulled it based on I think the recommended formula. Yes, let me actually start. So when I create a new formula, and this has been amazing for me, there's a bunch of templates that I've been playing around with. So some of these we already have a health score, sentiment score. So I just started with the health score template and then played around with it based on our different fields and things like that. So I basically have come up with, we have we have a scaled and a managed segment. So if it's a scaled customer, then it's got a slightly different calculation. If it's a managed customer, then it's, the higher touch ones. And we're basically combining CSM sentiment, the AI sentiment, and then the activity date, like days since the last activity, and the number of issues they've had. So, we don't want our customers in particular, we don't want them to be silent. We don't want them to be incredibly chatty. We want that like sweet spot right in the middle where they're engaged with us, but they're not mad. So we've got a bunch of different issue count, filters here, not filters, but calculations here. And this is something that we literally could not have done with our last tool, partly because we didn't have the sentiment AI fields and partly because it just wasn't as robust. But
That's something to touch on really quick. It's like,
yeah.
when you think about getting the value out of all these AI products, part one, and we kind of touched on this, it was the starting point for the entire conversation, is where is the data today?
Mhm.
And if you cannot get the data into one system, whether it's Pylon or anywhere else, the rest doesn't matter, to be honest. Like, if you don't have the data, you're just relying on partial data, which means you're still going to have to look in multiple places, or you're going to rely on manual notes. And so step one, no matter what, is like, get the data, because if you can't do that, it doesn't matter if there's some tool you're using or some workflow you're going to build that is a formula, because if it doesn't have the complete data, you just can't do it. So how do you get every customer touch point into the customer context graph, so that you can run these formulas or whatever workflows on top? So yeah, just wanted to put that out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, before Material, I was at a data analytics company. So I fully agree and fully understand. You need all of the data. It needs to be good data. And also the more robust functionality I find within Pylon, or the Pylon puts out, the more excited I am about using all of the data that we have to get these amazing insights. So yeah, those are the
Amazing.
kind of two that you talked about. I don't know if you want me to show more, but we're also almost at time.
I think, yeah, we're at time here. So why don't we just go to, if there are any questions that people have, we can answer those, or I don't think, let me actually see in terms of slides. We do have a question. If no one has questions, we can also answer this. I guess we have 1 minute, so maybe probably don't have too much time for questions. But
I can really quickly answer this one. Okay, I would say that what I did is I asked our CSM, because she's amazing, like Esther said. Anna is wonderful. But also there's a bunch of templates, the formula templates, the notebook templates. Those are really helpful and gave me a really good jumping off point.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, I think we are pretty much at time here. So I really quickly want to thank our guests, Esther and Kelsey. Thank you so much for taking the time, for prepping with us, for being early users of both the support side and then also account intelligence as we built it out over the past year. So thank you for the ongoing support. I'm glad we've been able to make this product useful for you. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And then also shout out to Kelsey, who organized this webinar and got everyone here. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.